Namaskar and very good afternoon to all the dignitaries sitting on the dais, all guests, delegates, and my colleagues with immense joy and pleasure. After a long time, we are meeting offline instead of online after the COVID scenario. It is almost past 2-3 years. We have less interacted with each other, but today is the time to meet one to one and resolve all your queries. I feel privileged and extend my warm welcome to all the presented over here from the industry side, from the our association side, Ahmedabad Management Association side, on this special webinar, which is specially designed for you. If you wish to establish your business in US and Canada, you are at the right point of a time, at the right place. This webinar is jointly organized by the Ahmedabad Management Association, Federation of Indian Exports Organization FIO India, and WeCare Group. Let us start this seminar with the powerful Devi Mantra and with the kind permission of the chair. If chair granted permission, we can start this. Shubham karotu kalyanam arogyam dhana sampada shatru buddhi vinashaya deepa jyotir namostute. Deepam jyoti parabrahma deepa jyotir janardana deepo hartume papam sandhya deepam namostute. It means the light of the lamp. Over here there is no lamp, but you can feel a virtual lamp which is inside our body. The light of a lamp which brings auspiciousness, good health and prosperity, which destroy all our internal inamicable feelings, and we salute this deep. Deep is a light. Now in the beginning of this session, I would like to request Mr. Meet Vakil to say few words on this occasion. Before that, I would like to introduce Mr. Meet Vakil. Meet Vakil, by profession, he is a businessman. He is into the leather business. But by passion, he is a very much sportsman. If you look at his gesture and posture, he is an athlete. He is a very good sportsman with a spirit. And he inspires like myself, including of myself. He inspires so many youth to be like him. So, professionally, he is engaged in leather industry. He is into garment industries also. After finishing his post-graduation in commerce and industry, along with a diploma in e-commerce, he joins his business of a leather industry called Yati Leather Products. He joined the manufacturing business in 2005, and he has expanded his business not only in India but many overseas country. So he is not only athlete, he is a motivator for us, and he is a very successful businessman. If you wish to take any of the insight about his success story, you have to meet him personally. So without taking much of the time, I am requesting Mr. Meet Vakil for his valuable opening address, sir.
Thank you, Darshan bhai. Half of what he said is not true. Half is only true. So, good evening to all of you. Good evening, delegates on the dais, off the dais, and all friends. So, the idea today, as Darshan bhai said, that we have been involved in export business, and many of you will also be involved or would want to get involved in exports. And US, Canada, basically whole NAFTA region is the main trading partner for Indian exporters. So what happens is all of us, all exporters, what we found was after a certain while of doing business in US, one needs to have a local presence in US. Local presence meaning to say local company, bank account, and few people there. Because US and Canada are countries where lot of people come with lot of products. So how do you distinguish yourself from other people and other products? So creating local presence is a must. Secondly, many of you might want to start your own e-commerce business, sell on Amazon or sell in USA through your website. Now it's very important if you're selling on e-commerce. People think that if you're selling online, we don't need to have any presence. It's fine. But in fact, it's the other way around. If you're selling e-commerce, the whole world is your market, and people look at you where you are based. So if you have a company and a bank account and an establishment in US, it always generates more faith and trust. That is what, it's a bitter truth, but that is what it is. So those are a few things which I would like to talk about. And NPZ Law Group has been a key partner for Yeti also. Our company, bank accounts, everything was established by NPZ Law Group. And third point is when we start exporting or working, we get advice from many people, and most of that is not true. And we fall into trap कि हाँ इसने बोला है, ये मेरा भाई है, US में रहता है, ऐसा करना है, वैसा करना है, ये करना है, इसमें तो ऐसा. But that is not professional advice. So to do anything in US or Canada, you need to have professional advisors, lawyers or consultants. So that is where the right information comes from, because those are countries where कोई setting wetting नहीं होता कि ऐसा हो गया तो ऐसा हो गया कर देंगे. You have to follow one particular path. Only then it's going to be useful. Otherwise you can have lot of problems in those countries. So that is what I wanted to talk about. And so please feel free to ask questions when they present. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vakil, for your all the insights about the USA and Canada. Now I would like to request Mr. Jay Prakash Goyal. The friends who is a member of a FIO, they hardly need any of the introduction of Mr. JP Goyal, because he is a 24/7 available for his all the members, and whenever the members raise any kind of a query or a problem, within the couple of minutes he resolves the same. So hardly he need any of the introduction, but many of the friends, they are not from FIO side, so I would like to introduce him. Shri Jay Prakash Goyal is a head of FIO Ahmedabad Western region. He is a management graduate from the Gujarat University, passed out in the year of 2001 with a specialization in the marketing. So any marketing funda you want to learn, you have to approach him. He joined a FIO as a coordinator in the year of 2007, and since 2013 he is heading a FIO Gujarat. He is associated with many of the B school and many of the colleges and universities as a visiting faculty, and he is giving all the insights about the international business from his actual experience. I would like to request Shri J.P. Goyal to give his introductory address. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mashru, for that wonderful introduction that you have given to me. Mr. David Nachman, Ms. Neha Batraji, Ms. Gagan Mundraji from NPZ Law Group USA, Mr. Dhaval Patel from VCare Group, Mr. Jainil Shah, Mr. Meet Vakil, Dr. Mashru, dignitaries of the dais and on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to one and all, and a very warm welcome to all of you on my behalf, on behalf of the Federation, AMA and the VCare Group. First of all, a very happy new year to you all. I think this Diwali also brought us a lot of happiness that we were awaiting since last more than 2 years. Friends, establishing business in USA, Canada and business immigration. Now today these things has become an essential for any exporter as such, because we lead the exporters organization. So on those views, I would be presenting opening remarks of mine. We all know that Indian economy has been doing well when we compare it as compared to the other economies of the world. despite of the recessionary pressures that are being felt from all the fronts. If we just check the figures and facts, last year we could achieve the highest of export, which is $422 billion, and in current year, since September, we have already achieved $232 billion, and that is a 17% growth per se last year. So we anticipate that we would be easily crossing 470 billion for the current year to grow. On import fronts, we had 380 billion with a growth of 38%. Now these figures looks fine, but what is concerning about is the trade deficit that we have been growing. The trade deficit this year as of September is $194 billion, and that is the growth of 95%. So this is the one aspect of the Indian economy. Now let me come to the other facet. We all know that USA is the biggest economy in the world with the GDP of around $25 trillion, followed by China, that is $18 trillion. Again, for the year 21-22, USA has emerged as the biggest trading partner of India, and which constitute the bilateral trade of $119 billion. If we see the top 10 trading partners of India, then USA is number 1, and this is the only country where we are having the surplus in terms of trade balance. While for rest of the countries, I say per se China, UAE, Saudi Arab, Switzerland, Germany, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc., our country is at trade deficit balance. So automatically it shows how much important is USA as an economy for us. The major product that we export to USA is diamond and jewelry, petroleum, frozen shrimps, pharmaceuticals, which are considered to be of high value addition products. With regard to Canada, we also have a very good relationship with Canada, which has grown by 9% over the period of 5 years, and India has exported almost 3.5 billion US dollar goods to Canada. However, it seems there is a huge potential, because again, if I say from the perspective of Canada, US is again a major trading partner, that is number 1 trading partner of Canada also. And most of the goods from Canada are also transiting, not only to Mexico, but to Canada too. So this automatically says the importance of both these countries that we look forward. Establishing our own setup in such country can definitely help to strengthen the relationship further. Again, with the geopolitical wars that are being going on, India is emerging as a major partner in Asian countries, which all the developed countries. And establishing an office, subsidiary, warehouse not only help the market to market your product, but this will also help us to understand the diversified culture, understand better needs, assess easy loans at much competitive rates, because developed countries has a rate of interest which is very minimal as compared to country that we have. And again, it will also have the most important thing, that is the reliability as a supplier in that country. And if you are establishing a warehouse, it will also encourage the just-in-time delivery. So on those grounds, we requested NPZ Law Group team to schedule an event in Ahmedabad for our exporters and the potential exporters to get the guidance about how to establish the setup and understand the business immigration laws as far as USA and Canada is concerned. So we are very sure with the crowd that is here, the subject is very much relevant, and we are sure that you will take the maximum benefit out of it. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goyal, for your valuable data which you have presented amongst all the participants, which is showing India and US trade, how important it is. Recently, our External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, has inaugurated his Gujarati book. It was actually written in English. The book name is The Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World. In Gujarati, it was launched at Ahmedabad Management Association only, Nava Bharatni Raniti. In his book, he has mentioned very good para that is related to entire world economic policy and Indian policy. In his book, he has mentioned that this is a time to engage America, manage China, cultivate Europe, reassure Russia, and bring Japan into play. In the first sentence, he has a mention about the USA. So as sir has said that USA is a $25 trillion economy, so it is a very, very important. We cannot ignore right now USA and Canada. So if you was to establish your company, or if you want to grow your business in EXIM market, you have to knock the door of a USA and Canada. So in this session we have welcomed our distinguished guest to give us some of the insight about the USA and Canada and how you can grow your business in this region. If you are looking at the audience side, there is a beyond our imagination and beyond the capacity of the hall, entire hall is a full, that is showing your extraordinary effort for a business which you are looking for a USA and Canada. So without taking much of the time, it is our Sanskriti and it is our culture that we want to welcome our guest. So I would like to request Mr. Meet Vakil to welcome Mr. David Nachman with the bouquet and with a memento. In India, it is says that yatra naryastu pujyante tatra devata ramante. So I would like to request Mrs. Harsha Vakil to give a memento and a flower to Ms. Nehal Batra. Okay. I'm sorry. On behalf of Harsha Vakil, Deepak Vakil. I would like to request Mr. Kartikeya Shah to give a memento to Ms. Gagan Mundra. I would like to request Mr. Praful Solanki to give a memento and bouquet of a flower to Dhruvin Mehta. Dhruvin Mehta is the president of IIT Bar Association. I would like to request Mr. Dhaval Shah to give a bouquet and a memento to Mr. Jainil Shah. Thank you very much all of you for the bouquet of a flower as per our tradition and culture. Now I would like to request Mr. Dhaval Shah for a welcome address. Prior to that, I would like to introduce Mr. Dhaval B. Shah. He is an entrepreneur, trainer and faculty. His way of a business and way of a training, it is related to serving and teaching through technology, training and consultancy. So all the capability and all the success story inside him. He has a 23 years of the experience in export, import, custom clearance, international shipping, freight forwarding. He is specialized in hazardous goods cargo movement, handling and transportation. He is presently executive committee member of EXIM Club Ahmedabad. He is a co-chairperson of a logistics task force of a Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry for the year of 2022-23. He is a visiting faculty at many of the B school like Ahmedabad Management Association, Bharuch District Management Association, Ganpat University, Bhavans College, BK School of Management, HKMA Academy of a Professional Center, Shanti Business School and many more. So I would like to request Mr. Dhaval Shah for his words. Dhaval bhai, over to you.
Good evening all of you. First of all, I want to thank you AMN FIO to support for this program, and always thankful to all speakers who come from the US and Canada for this program. For their information, first of all, I want to thank you, all of you. For your information, we have participants from Ahmedabad, Baroda, Morbi, even from Rajkot, Bhavnagar, and some are from the specially coming from the Mumbai for this program. So I heartily thankful to all of you to make this program successful. यहाँ पे जो लोग आए, obviously they are in export or imports, or they want to start exporting imports, right? So VCare Group is always with all the fraternity members who want to make a successful business related to export and imports. So as a VCare Group, we provide a end-to-end logistic solutions who want to start any business with any countries. In addition, as a VCare Group, we are giving a training to companies who are in the export and imports. We train their executives how to make export documents, how to calculate the export price at their premises. In addition, what Darshan Bhai has mentioned, I am a faculty at various universities. As on date, my main vision is to help next youth who want to make a career in the international shipping and logistics. And I am giving a consultation services for a companies who want to make a growth. I helping them to how to make a SOPs, how to design a working structures, how to modify their current online systems. As example, आपको कोई सॉफ्टवेयर यूज़ कर रहे हो तो एज अ विथ IT बैकग्राउंड आई कैन टीच यू के दिस आर द फॉल्ट्स, यू कैन करेक्ट इट, सो यू कैन give a better performance. So this is the services which as a VCare Group we provide, and this is my short request from this platform. As I mentioned you, I am personally putting my all efforts to train a new youth who want to start a career in international shipping and logistics. We, as a VCare Group has a IT division. I am a basically Java developer. So during the Corona period, we have designed a platform which is particularly for the placement supports. So we train our people, we register them on our platforms, which is 100%. This is the free of cost service. As a company, you can register your company on this portal, and who are the students who we train with the support of AMA, with the support of Bhavans. They all are available on this portal. So you can choose them through the portal. You can hire them. You can schedule interviews, and if you hire any candidates from this portal, this is 100% free of cost. My motive is to do best for next youth who want to start a career in international shipping and logistics. The reason is the awareness about the international shipping and logistics very less. As a academic prospects, काफ़ी लोगों को पता नहीं है कि ऐसा भी एक सब्जेक्ट है जिसमें हम लोग कैरियर बना सकते हैं. तो with the support of various universities, I am putting my effort, and this is my small request on this platform. I need your supports so we can help new youth, which always will be a benefit for you also. So this is the short from my side. Thank you again all of you, and now I request to Darshan Bhai. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dhaval Bhai, for your valuable insights about the shipping logistics training, and train the trainer also. So thank you for that. Now all you are waiting for our guest. So I would like to request our two guests who is speaking about the panel discussion on USA. So there are so many questions in your mind you can ask after the presentation, but I am very much sure they have a very wonderful presentation, and in their presentation there might be a 99% whatever the doubt in your mind, it will cover during that presentation only. So I would like to request our guest Mr. David Nachman and Ms. Nehal Batra for the join the panel discussion followed by the question and answer. Prior to that, I would like to introduce Mr. David Nachman. He is one of the managing attorney at NPZ USA. He has over 35 years of experience in corporate and business immigration and nationality law practice. Mr. Nachman is a member of New Jersey Bar, the U.S. Court of International Trade, and U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. He served as a adjunct professor of Penguin Studies Immigration Law Module. I have a very wide introduction page. It might take so much of the time, so both have requested his introductory address should be very less, and I have to summarize within few lines. Also, I would like to introduce Ms. Snehal Batra. She has over 20 years of experience in immigration. She works in all area of US business and family immigration to help clients successfully navigate from any country to India. She has been frequently quoted in the Times of India and number of articles related to US immigration published. Ms. Batra earned as a Juris Doctorate JD from the Rutgers University School of Law at New York and Bachelor of Art with honors to Political Science from the Seton Hall University. So I would like to request Mr. Nachman and Ms. Batra for his panel discussion. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you for all the delegates on the dais and off the dais. And it is really a pleasure to be back here. We come frequently to Gujarat, and it's great to see so much interest. So much interest in establishing businesses in the United States and Canada. And what we learned in the pandemic, I think, is that things are within reach. We learned Zoom is a great way to communicate throughout the world. And we also understand now that it's easy to get out beyond our borders. And for certain types of cultures, especially the culture here in Gujarat, here in Ahmedabad, we have to come and we have to say hello and we have to look everyone in the eye, and that's the way, that's the culture. We have to do that. So it's really nice that finally we're able to do that after things have calmed down, after the pandemic. I promised my colleague that I would not be too long, so because we have a lot to cover, but I just want to say that it's great to be back here. It is a long way for us to travel, but every time we make this journey, it always seems to be well worth it. So thank you very much for having us. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Snehal, and what we're going to do is we're going to hopefully go through some of the ways in which you can extend the reach of your businesses beyond India, if you're not already doing it, and into the United States and Canada. So with that, I'll let you do that. Okay.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming out tonight. It's very exciting to see a very large crowd here. I think last time we were here, about 3 years ago, we had maybe half the room was filled, so this is a nice welcome. So today we're going to talk about some of the ways that you can expand your business in the U.S., which will lead to eventually getting maybe a non-immigrant visa like the L1A, and also will lead to a green card. But before we get started, I like to know the audience. So raise your hand if you have a business in India currently, if you have a company. Okay, now how many of you also have a company in the US? Okay, and how many want to start a business in the US? Okay, great. So today we will, okay, thank you. So today we're going to provide you a brief overview on how to set up your company in the U.S., how to expand and transfer yourself or a key individual to the U.S. on an L1 visa. So of course, some of the benefits of having a company in the U.S., it's to enhance your reputation, you get paid in U.S. dollars, access to American capital markets, angel investors, maybe also access to new technology and products. But we're going to focus on, of course, how to get yourself to the U.S. on the L1A if you have already a company in India and you're looking to expand in the U.S. Because the L1A is a really nice visa option that allows you to live in the U.S., bring your spouse and your children who are under 21 to start your business. So, David, we get this question all the time, right? Can you open a company in the U.S. from India? What do you say?
Absolutely.
That's right. So,
I've been doing it on a daily basis.
so if you are in India, you can still open a company in the U.S. You can invest, all right? Invest in your business. You don't necessarily have to physically be in the U.S., okay? Many times people are concerned that if I can't get to the U.S., how am I going to start my company? You can start your company. You can also transfer money. And then hopefully we have the infrastructure in place where you can transfer yourself, okay? So the PowerPoint and information we have a lot of information. We don't have a lot of time tonight. So we're going to give you a brief overview, and then you can, of course, feel free to contact us if you have further questions. And we're going to save the questions for the end, because otherwise we'll never get through the presentation. And I think most of your questions will be answered in the presentation. So here we've basically summarized 4 points on how do you start a business in the U.S. Okay, first it involves forming a company, and then you have to obtain a FEIN, which is a Federal Employer Identification Number, which you get from the IRS, which then allows you to open up a bank account for your company, and it also allows you to transfer money from the Indian business to the U.S. entity. Now, when you complete these 4 steps, you're basically ready to start your operations. Okay. Your company in the U.S. is a separate legal entity. It can conduct business without you being present in the U.S. Now, of course, you are interested in having your own people there to start up the operations, and we'll talk about how to do that. So, David, we also get this question quite often, right? Which state do you form your company? And what do we say to our clients?
Every day. Well, it depends. Some states, so first of all, the formation is something that is a local question, whereas the immigration question is like a national question. So, yes, ma'am. Whereas the immigration question is like a national question. But where to form the company is really a choice that maybe is driven by taxes, because the states have different taxes. So everyone has a different tax protocol. So probably the best thing to do is to work very closely with a good CA, to work very closely with a good CPA, and then to work with your lawyer, who will be able to tell you the pros and cons of each of the tax structures in each of the states. Now, probably the big question is, do I form a corporation in Delaware?
Right.
And so we get that question frequently, and that was something of the past. Forming a corporation in Delaware, there are certain advantages to forming a corporation, but there are also a lot of disadvantages to it. But you can form a corporation in Delaware. The thing is going to be that if you ever want to do anything with that company, you're always going to need a Delaware lawyer to help you with it, and that's going to be an additional fee. So that might be something you want to think about.
So the state that you will be basing your business, okay, maybe it's Delaware, but let's say you decide, I'm going to start in Texas because I have relatives in Texas. That's where I'm going to form my company, or that's where I plan to be. Then that's the state where you should register the business. Now, just because you registered in that state, it doesn't mean you're not able to do business in New York, California, Minnesota. It really doesn't matter. So the first thing to consider is, where do you plan to see yourself? And then you can connect with a corporate attorney or an accountant to help you form the business. Now, we're based in New Jersey, So we are able to assist you in forming a U.S. company in New Jersey. And then the next question is, what type of ownership does it need to be? How is it going to be a wholly owned subsidiary? Is it going to be an affiliate? David, what do you suggest to these clients?
Well, it depends what I'm going to use that company for. So if I'm trying to establish a platform for the purposes of immigrating someone, what I'm usually going to do is make it a wholly owned subsidiary of the foreign company. If you have companies, let's say here in India, and then many people have opened up affiliates in Dubai, perhaps it becomes a subsidiary of the Indian company, or it becomes a subsidiary of the company in Dubai. But that's something, again, that you would want to look at from a tax perspective to see whether there's an advantage to structuring it that way. But there are three particular structures that you want to look at for the purposes of using the L visa, which is what Snehal is going to get into, and that is subsidiary, which we just discussed, an affiliate relationship, which means that there's ownership by, let's say, a common control group. So the same people who own the interest in India or in Dubai then also own the same interest in the United States. So that's a common control group. Or a branch office. And that's something actually that we don't see too often because that's more something that's cultural to the Korean community.
I also want to mention that even if you don't have a company in India, it doesn't mean you cannot form a company in the US, okay? But we're focused on the client having an Indian entity because we're going to be talking about the L. But if you have no presence in India, meaning you don't have a company, but you want to open one in the US, you can still do that. So when you form a company, you have some options, right? Do you want to form an LLC? Are you going to form a corporation? So for the purposes of immigration, it doesn't matter. The Immigration Service does not care if you have an LLC or if you have a corporation, okay? However, there are tax consequences in terms of opening it as an LLC or corporation. So those are considerations that you want to talk to your CA about. Which one makes more sense? Should I open an LLC or a corporation? David, do you want to just go over briefly the difference between the two?
So basically what you have going on with an LLC is that it's generally a pass-through organization. So it's going to be taxed like a partnership. Corporations are taxed both at the corporate level and also at the individual level. The thing is, though, that if you have, let's say, a small corporation that with a startup type of thing, oftentimes people don't get too concerned because you can sort of move the money around such that you're not really being taxed at the corporate level. The big thing, and this is what we often find, is that individuals get advice where they're told they can do a subchapter S, and where you have a foreign organization that's looking to open an entity in the United States, you can't do subchapter S. So stay away from the subchapter S corporation, at least until you become a lawful permanent resident or a citizen. Okay.
This is just another diagram to show you the difference between the corporation and the LLC, and then the tax filing, how you would file that. So as an Indian citizen, you have two options. You can form an LLC or you can form a C Corp. Again, these are questions that you want to talk to your CA about. And if you already have existing operations in India and you are seriously thinking of expanding in the US, eventually file for L1A, it's very important to speak to your immigration attorneys, preferably us, and your CA, so everybody's on the same page and we don't have to, clean up the ownership documentation. Okay, so now you have the business formed, right? So that actually, David, how do you form the company? Do you just go online? Do you need to send paperwork in the mail? How does one do that?
So again, I think it really depends upon what you're using the entity for. So if you're using the entity, for example, as a platform for immigration purposes, which is what we're sort of talking about today, you have to do what's called abiding by the corporate formalities. And if you don't abide by the corporate formalities, you potentially leave yourself open to individuals doing what's called piercing the corporate veil and going after the individual because they're using the organization as their alter ego. So what you want to do, and when I say abiding by the corporate formalities, it means you'll do a certificate of incorporation or a certificate of formation if it's an LLC. You'll do bylaws if it's a corporation, and then you'll do minutes. And then you'll also have stock certificates, and you'll have to issue those stock certificates. And so in an LLC, you have, again, a certificate of formation, you'll have an operating agreement, you'll have membership certificates, and again, it's really important to actually issue those certificates and not to leave them in the corporate book. And because if you leave it in the corporate book, you're, again, not abiding by the corporate formalities.
Don't get too scared. This is not stuff that you have to do, okay? Your accountant
We
or
lose
the
sleep over
attorneys
this.
will prepare all the documentation. So forming the company, you actually can go online and register, okay? It's pretty quick, but it's all these other documents that you're going to need legal assistance or help from your accountant. Once the business is formed, then you need to obtain a tax ID number from the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. And typically for that, you're going to need a social security number or someone who will be authorized that has a social security number to obtain the tax ID for your business.
Aunties and uncles are very helpful, right?
Yes. And so once you have your FEIN, you can then open up the business bank account. Okay, so you want to open the account in the name of the company. Once that has been established, you can then transfer money from your Indian company to the US company. Okay, it's very important that sometimes if you're on, if you have a B1, B2 visa, many times our clients travel to the US to start operations, form a company. Don't transfer your personal funds into this business account, okay? For the purposes of doing the immigration paperwork for the L, you don't want to do that unless that individual will also own the US company and has some majority ownership in the foreign company. So don't transfer any personal funds into the US bank account, okay? Any significant amount. You know, if you want to put in, you know, $500, $1,000 to start the account up, that's okay, but, you know, don't deposit $5,000, $10,000 because it raises questions about who has ultimate control over that company.
So on a daily basis, I would say I get questions about what documents do I need to open up a bank account in the United States for this separate legal entity that has been created, namely the LLC or the C Corp. So that would be, number one, the certificate of formation, because the bank's going to be looking for that. Two is either the bylaws if it's a corporation or an operating agreement if it's an LLC. And let's see, yeah, I think, and that's really about it. With those two documents, banks should be able to open up, they should be able to go ahead and, and the federal tax identification number from the IRS. And with those documents, the bank should be able to open up a bank account in the name of the corporation.
So now you have your company, you have a bank account, you have a tax ID number. The company can do business in the US. You can stay in India. You don't need to be in the US to conduct business, okay? It is a separate entity. The company can hire people, it can issue invoices, sell products. So it's really important to remember, as David said, it is a separate legal entity. So once you have formed the US company, okay, of course it allows you to expand your business. You also now have the ability to file an L1 visa on your behalf or another key individual in your company. The L visa is extremely powerful because it is also a fast track to the green card. The L visa allows you to live and work in the US, and as I said, it's a fast track to the green card. The L visa has a separate component, which is called the new company L1, which means that if you are interested in expanding your operations, the US Immigration Service allows an individual to travel to the US and start up their operations. They give you 1 year to start up your US operations. Some of the key benefits of the L1 is that there's no educational requirement. So you don't need to have a degree. You are given a period initially of 1 year for the new company, okay? Continuous 2-year extensions all the way until 7 years. You have a total of 7 years on the L1. It is also dual intent, which means you can apply for a green card. There's no annual limit. The H-1B, many of you have heard of that, has an annual quota of 65,000 visas. The L1 does not, okay? And also your spouses are able to travel and work without a separate work authorization document. The L1, as I said, allows for a new office, one person to be transferred to the US to form, to start up the operations. So now we're going to focus on the L1 visa, now that we form the company, and we'll go through the basic overview, the requirements. So the first very important one is qualifying relationship. We talked about that, the parent, subsidiary, affiliate. So the key here is your company in India and the company in the US, they have to have a qualifying relationship. So the same individual or group of individuals have to control both companies. Okay, one of these businesses, in this case in India, they have to be doing business in their country. The key person who you are transferring, the manager or executive, has to show they have been employed for the company for at least 1 year in full-time capacity as an executive or manager. And they have to be coming to the US to work in an executive or managerial capacity. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about some of these requirements. You know what, let's talk about sufficient physical premises, because that's actually next, David. So when we file the L1 application, does the business, the US company, can they have a virtual office? Do they need a physical commercial space?
So that's a very common question that we get, and it's especially important because a lot of individuals don't want to commit to a lease because they don't know whether or not they're going to get the visa. And leases can be very expensive, and then you find out later on that you're obligated on this lease if the visa doesn't end up working out. So it's a big concern. But virtual space is tricky, because what ends up happening with virtual space is that it's not that it's not permitted, it's just not the best practice. So it's better to have true commercial space. And you know, you wonder, how does the government figure out whether it's true commercial space? They're on Google Earth. So they're looking on Google Earth to see where you took that space. And basically, it's a totality of the circumstances test. And what that means is it depends upon what type of business you have. If you have a business that's going to carry a lot of inventory, then you need to have space that's going to hold that inventory. So in certain circumstances, you may have an office, and then you may have a warehouse that's going to hold the inventory. And you can do that. That's okay. But having a small virtual office, if you're holding a lot of inventory, the government's going to say, how can you do that? There's no room for the inventory, right?
So let's go back to qualifying relationship, because it's very important that when you form the company in the US, we make sure we can still maintain a relationship with the foreign company. So for example, let's say in India you have a partnership, right? You have 3 individuals who own the Indian entity. One of those individuals is going to be transferred on the L. David, can he own 100% of the US company?
Well, that doesn't create a situation where you have that controlling factor going on. Like I said before, you have to have like a common control group. So if you have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in the Indian company, and then let's say you have the same 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in the US company, then it's okay, it's an easy sell. But what you could do is, I guess, you could restructure the organization, have 51% owned by one person, and then that same person has 51% of the US company, and then it qualifies. So that's one of the really interesting things that you can do with a company, is that you can restructure the equity so as to make it one of these qualifying organizations.
Can you also have a US partner for your US company?
A US partner, sure, absolutely.
So the U.S. partner in that case would have to be would have to have minority interest, okay, and at least 51% of the ownership in the U.S. company needs to be the same as the Indian company. So before you decide to form the company in the U.S., you're going to think about, you're considering whether you're going to do the LLC or corporation. Another very key factor is what is going to be the ownership of the U.S. company, okay? Sometimes our clients think that, I'm going to go to the U.S., so I'm going to open the company in my name. That only works if you are also the only person who owns the company in India or majority interest in India. Okay, so it doesn't automatically qualify you if you go to the US and open the company in your name. So very, very important. We have to look at the ownership of the Indian company and make sure that you're going to have that qualifying relationship.
So I may be jumping the gun, but one of the other questions that we get frequently is the business that you open up in the United States, does that have to be the same business? Is that the next slide?
No, but it's coming.
Okay.
But no, you can be in any line of business in the U.S., and we will get to that.
Okay.
This is a list of the key documentation that's required for the L1. So when we file the case with immigration, they're going to want to see who owns the U.S. company, who owns the Indian entity, because we have to satisfy that qualifying relationship criteria. They will also like to see the bank statements showing the transfer of the funds from your Indian company to the U.S. company. We have to provide tax returns for the Indian company. We need to provide the one-year lease for the U.S. company. Now, we also have to show the person who is being transferred to the U.S. has been working for at least 1 full year in the Indian entity within the last 3 years. So let's talk a little bit about that, David. A lot of times we have individuals who are partners and directors, so they don't actually receive a salary. Is that a problem?
Well, it's difficult for us to prove that the individual has been working for 1 full year within the last 3 years if they're not on payroll. So we encourage our clients to use the payroll as a methodology because then we have a piece of evidence that's tried and true to show that the individual has been working for 1 full year.
Right. So let me just clarify a couple things here. The person being transferred to the U.S. to start up the operations, okay? We'll call him Mr. Nachman, maybe. Mr. Nachman does not have to own the Indian company or any interest in the Indian company. He only needs to show that he's been working for the Indian company. Okay, so L1A is not just for owners. Actually, L1A is for people who are working as managers or executive. Okay, so if you happen to be an owner and you want to transfer yourself, that's great. But if you have a key individual in your company that you know is actually going to be the one you want to transfer because they're going to start up the operations, that's fine. That person would have to show that they have been working for at least one year in a full-time managerial or executive role. Okay, so it's not just for owners. Now, we also need to show how the person has been working as a manager or executive. So a title itself doesn't prove that. So if you're a director, that's great, but the director title doesn't mean you qualify. Okay, we have to show them how are you working as a manager or executive.
So what types of responsibilities would a true manager executive have?
So you need to show that you have authority to hire people, fire people, set goals, maybe set budgets, okay, do performance reviews. And immigration loves paperwork. Okay, we are still pretty old school in the US. Immigration requires everything to be filed by paper. So we need to prove that as a manager, you have the authority to do these things. So we submit offer letters, performance reviews.
What about salary?
We also have to show that the manager or executive is getting paid a comparable salary for that role in that type of industry. Okay, so that's also important.
So if you have an individual who's making very important financial decisions on a day-to-day basis, it's easier to prove that that individual is a manager. But how do you prove that they're responsible for those important financial decisions? Maybe emails.
Right, so the paper trail, we have to create the paper trail. So, and we know that that's not usually how business is conducted in India, right? You just call somebody on the cell phone and do this, and it gets done, but we have to create the paper trail. So for those of you who are considering this option down the road, that's an important point to note. In terms of the documents for the manager, we need to show passport if they have a degree, any other qualifications. And also, what are they going to be doing in the U.S. as the manager? Start up the operations, hire people in the U.S., maybe make budget decisions on the expansion.
And maybe belong to organizations that managers belong to, like the American Management Association, right?
Right. Another very important document in this L1 process is the business plan. David, is this the same business plan that I would submit to my bank for a loan?
Well, not necessarily, but there is a great deal of detail which is required when you're doing this type of a business plan. So it's, I would say, comparable, because you're doing a 5-year pro forma projection, which your financial individual can help you to do, or your CA or
Right.
CPA. You also do a competitive analysis. And the amount of detail, you want to detail the experience that the individual has maybe in management. And these, again, going to the totality of the circumstances, this is what the government's going to look at in order to determine that you are truly a manager executive.
Should they write it themselves?
So we know that our clients sometimes do like to write them themselves. Oftentimes, and I believe it's also in India where, when you're studying commerce, they're teaching you how to write business plans. In the States, they teach us how to write business plans when we're doing our Masters of Business. But I generally find that going to an expert who knows how to write a business plan that the government is looking for is really the best way to handle it. And it costs a little more, but it's an investment because you know that the way they do it is tried and true.
So the immigration business plan is very different than a business plan you would use for a bank. The business plan is also an important document because it shows the Immigration Service your plan for expansion. When you file the L1A with immigration, you actually can be a very new business that has done nothing in the U.S. There's no requirement that you hire people, you start conducting business, you have clients, you sell product. You can actually stop when you transfer the funds, okay? The business plan is going to help explain to the Immigration Service what your company in the U.S. is going to do, what it's going to do in year 1, what does the hiring plan look like for year 1, what does the turnover look like, how are the companies related, and then what is the plan for the business all the way up to year 5. Now, David, should our client be very aggressive in the business plan? Because, maybe immigration will approve their case if they say they're going to hire 10 people in year 1. Is that a good idea?
So we call that a slippery slope, because the problem is that if you are aggressive and then after your first year you're going back for an extension, if you haven't met the criteria that you've set out, those aggressive criteria, then you're setting yourself up potentially to have a denial of that new company L. However, if you scale back and you're not too aggressive, there might be a possibility, depending upon the environment, that you might be able to meet the criteria that you've set out. One of the big problems that we faced, especially during the pandemic, is that folks had really set out some aggressive, even the most modest standards were aggressive because things were really set back during the pandemic. So those folks have a tough hurdle to jump over when they do their extensions.
It's important to know that when you file for the L1 and you have the approval and you travel to the U.S., you have to carry out that business plan. Immigration when you file your extension of the L, they're going to look at that business plan. They're going to say, well, you said you were going to hire 6 people in year 1, but you only hired 2. So that's not very good. Okay? If you say you're going to hire maybe 2 to 3 people in year 1, and you hired 4 or 5 people, that looks really good. Okay, so there's no set number. Immigration is not saying you have to hire 10 people, 15 people. You have to hire the number of people that your business requires. But you do have to hire employees. So if your company in the US is not ready to hire employees and start up operations, then maybe we don't file the L1A right now. We wait a little bit. Okay, so just want to make sure that it's clear that even if your business in the US does not require a US workforce, you still have to hire some individuals.
So, Snehal, is that a service that you provide when you start to speak to people? You have an initial consultation. Do you say to them, you make an assessment as to whether or not maybe they're ready or not? And if they're not, do you work with them to get the right things in place so that they are ready?
Absolutely. So when you consult with us, we look at, of course, what's happening in India, make sure you qualify, and then we're going to analyze what your plan is in the US. Sometimes our clients are not ready because they really want to test the market, right? They don't want to start the expansion if their business is not going to do well or they're not going to have enough customers. And that's okay. Like I said, the US entity is a separate entity that can start conducting business. So maybe after 6 months or even a year, you can go in and file the L1. And for some of our clients, we've done that. They formed the company and they were not ready to expand, and then a year or even 2 years later, we are able to file a new company L1 because they have not yet started their operations. So it's a very collaborative process. The more you tell us, the better we're able to help you. So let's say now we have everything ready for the L1 filing. We file the case. We get an approval. You get to the consulate, and you have your visa stamp. And now you're in the US. You have 1 year to start your operations, okay? Your extension is filed before that 1 year period expires. At that time, you have to show what you were able to accomplish in year 1. Okay? Did you hire the 3 employees? You know, did you get new customers? Are you actively doing business? They're going to look at all of that. Okay? Because they want to see that the US company still requires that foreign manager. If there's nobody to manage and there's no business to oversee in the US, you're not going to get that extension. So that's very important to know. Another important point I want to mention, David, once the manager is in the US, can they close their operations in India?
Well, it depends. I guess that's lawyer's answer, right? It depends on what's going on with the business, because if you're closing the operation in India and it's the only foreign operation, then what you've done is you've severed the qualifying relationship. So, however, a lot of our clients, what they've done is they've opened up subsidiaries or affiliates in India, Dubai, United States, and Canada. So if you then decide that you want to shut off or sever the relationship with, let's say, the Indian operation, you can go ahead and do that because you still have viable organizations outside the United States to maintain the relationship.
So your Indian company must stay active all the way till you get your green card. And that could be 3 years, 5 years, whatever it takes. So you cannot start slowly shutting down in India because it's going to create a problem when you file your extension, when you file for your green card. So you just have to make sure that you continue operations on both sides. Okay, once we have that extension, so we filed the initial L1, they gave you 1 year. You were able to start up the operations, hire your employees, then you filed for an extension. And immigration grants the extension, you get 2 years. At what point then, David, can they file for a green card?
So once you have that extension, once it's been approved, you can go ahead and file for the green card right off.
So the L1 requirements are the same as the EB1-3 or EB1-3 or EB1C priority worker requirements. Basically,
And why is EB1 so important to this audience?
so EB1 means that it is the first preference immigrant visa category, and there are no backlogs, okay, that most people from India face in the EB2 or EB3 category. So for example, if you're in the US or you have friends or relatives in the US on an H-1B, right, you probably know that they've been waiting for a very long time for their green card, because those individuals most likely are going to fall under the EB2 or EB3 preference, where the L1 is under the EB1 preference. So you're not subject to the backlog. So that's very nice. So at the time you file for a green card, we still have to show that the foreign company is doing business, there's a qualifying relationship, and then if you're in the US, you're able to apply for an adjustment of status, or if you're going to do consular processing of the green card, then you have to go back to India to get that finalized. It also is a nice category because it allows your spouse and children under 21 to get the green card at the same time. So now I think we have just some Q&A. So if you have an Indian company, okay, and you're working for the Indian company, and you can show that you have been paid by that business, then it is very possible for you to file a new company L1A. I think we answered this, but let's talk a little bit further about this.
So this is a question that we get almost on a daily basis, especially from folks here, is do you have to go into the same line of business over there? And the answer is no, which is why a lot of people want to do business in the United States, because it's tremendously flexible. So you could, for example, have a manufacturing firm here, and when you go over there, you can buy hotels. When you go over there, you can buy gas stations, bodegas. So it's tremendously flexible. So you don't have to go into the same line of business. And the other thing is that when you have a business over there, and this is something that's really important, when you form your business, it doesn't have to be just one type of business. You can go into 3 or 4 different lines of business. We just had an individual from, as a matter of fact, from Ahmedabad, who got his green card. He was in the restaurant business, the real estate business, and also a chemical import business. And he was running it all out of one place. And that was the job of the accountant, to take care of doing that all on a consolidated balance sheet for him.
Just keep in mind, however, the business or the type of business that you get into, for the purposes of the L, you want to still have employees that work for that company. So the gas station example, that only works when we have multiple gas stations. So I just want to make it clear, it's not to say that you're going to buy one gas station and now we're going to do the L1 and everything is going to go well, because the key to this filing is that the person is coming as a manager or executive, right? So typically you're not going to have employees at a gas station that are professional. So the manager is not coming to manage gas attendants, a cashier. There has to be some other professionals within that organization as well. So just keep that in mind.
Gas station empires are much better.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, what about the investment? What's
this
the
is-
minimum amount of investment?
Yeah, so this is a frequent question that we get oftentimes because people are doing this analysis shoulder to shoulder with what's called the EB5 investor visa, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. We'll talk about that. But what is the minimum amount of investment? There is none. That's a beautiful thing. You're not tying up your money. And basically what it is it's I call it the smell test. It's basically what type of business are you running, and do you have enough money to run it? So that's really what it comes down to. So if you want to open up a consulting firm, then what is the investment that you need in a consulting firm? You buy computers, you buy a sign, you have a you have a website. What kind of investment is that? Like under $10,000, right?
Yeah, so $75,000 might be enough. If you can show that the foreign company is going to be able to financially support this new company in the US, okay? And, stock also can be used to capitalize the US company. So I have some clients who are in the diamond business here, based in Surat, so they transfer stock to capitalize the US company. That's perfectly acceptable. How much turnover does the Indian company need to show to qualify for the L, David?
I'm not sure who started the rumor, but there is a rumor going around that you have to have a certain turnover, because my Gujarati clients always call me, and it's not that. So here's the thing: I know that everyone is proud of their turnover, because they're always saying, "This is my turnover," but I always say to them, it's not relevant. It doesn't really matter what your turnover is. I mean, it's great that you have that turnover and that profit, but for the purposes of what we're doing, the turnover is really not relevant.
Yeah. So immigration, I like to tell my clients, take a look at it from a common sense approach, okay? Why would a foreign company, maybe that's marginal, expand into an international market? Does it make sense? So sometimes we don't have a large turnover, but the business in India has been around for 35, 50 years, okay? So we then talk about the longevity and the success of that business. We're not focused on the numbers. Sometimes the business is fairly new, maybe 2 or 3 years in India, but they have, a huge, significant turnover. So then we talk about that. So, don't be dissuaded because somebody told you, oh, you need to have this much minimum turnover, otherwise you don't get an L. That's not true. Employees, immigration also looks to see how many employees does your Indian company have on the books. Is it profitable? Again, does it make sense to expand into the US? Let me just see what else we have here.
Well, I think the big question here, Snehal, which we often get on a daily basis is, so I have my B1, B2 that I was able to secure at the consulate pre-pandemic, of course, because now you have to wait 3 years, but that's another story altogether that we deal with. But let's say you have a B1, B2 stamp in your passport, which many of you do. Then if you go to the United States and you're there as a B1, can you change your status to L1A?
Yes, you can, but you have to wait 90 days after you come to the US on the B1 before we can do a change of status to L1A. I don't recommend clients do that until they are certain that they are ready to do the expansion, they have all the documents, they can make the transfer, because this process takes some time. Typically, doing the L1, from our standpoint, from forming the company, transferring the money, doing the business plan, it takes maybe 3 to 4 months when you have all of the documentation ready. So if you don't have the documentation ready, do not make the plan to go to the US on the B1, B2 and do the L1, because now we're just playing catch up with the time and making all kinds of documents that are not going to be that helpful. So really think about that before you come, but you can do a change of status to L1 after you come to the US on the B1.
I'm just going to give a little immigration trivia, because I always like to tell folks who have B1, you know why they call it B1, B2? It's because you really have a choice of which one you want to come in on. B2s are business, those are visitors for pleasure, and those are given for 6 months. But if you're coming in on a B1, that's a business visitor. And under the Foreign Affairs Manual, you can come in, seek an investment, and technically you're allowed to ask for up to a year. So if you can articulate a reason why you need to be there for a year, they're allowed to give you a whole year at the port of entry. So as business people, you could have a letter saying you're in the United States seeking an investment and you need more time. And so you can actually seek up to a year. Little immigration trivia there.
That's a great point, David. So if you do plan to travel to the US because you have the B1, B2, you're exploring business options, maybe going to form the company, look at office space, you should say B1. You're coming to conduct business for your foreign company. Okay? Don't tell them you're coming to visit family or friends, because then you're going to come in as a B2. And then it raises a question when you come in as a B2 to change your status to L1. Okay, if that's your plan all along, then that's what you want to say. I'm coming from the foreign company, here's my business card, this is what I plan to do. I need to form the company, I need to make sure the money can be transferred, and then I'm going to go back to India. Consular processing, all that means is you're going to do your visa stamping in India. So once your L1 is approved, okay, we have the extension, then we file for the green card, which is done on Form I-140, and if the priority date is current, you're eligible to apply for an adjustment of status, which is that final step in the green card. The really exciting thing about this L1A now is that the last time I think we were here in 2019, due to the COVID backlogs, visa numbers not being able to be used, the L1 to the green card is very fast. I have clients that we did the initial L1 in 2020. We are now in the final stages of the green card process. So we're talking about 3 years. Okay, and during that time, don't forget, you are in the US, you are working for your company, it's your company, you're making the amount of investment that you want to make. So this is a very, very nice option for individuals who have businesses here in India. And even if we're not able to get to that green card within that timeline, you have a total of 7 years. That actually brings another question, David. Does the L1 applicant, must he or she stay in India the whole time?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I think there's just a really bad rumor on the internet that the individuals have to be in the United States for the whole time. But the idea, of course, is that you're a multinational executive, so you're traveling back and forth and taking care of business on both sides.
So the L1A is a very, very nice option, which does lead to a green card. And then we have the EB5 program, which is basically the green card for investors. And we're actually going to ask one of our colleagues to come talk about that. So Girish, do you want to come up here, please?
So we're going to tell you a little bit about the EB5 because when you do an analysis about the way to come, you want to try to analyze these two options shoulder to shoulder, pros and cons, because one size doesn't fit all, right? Okay. I don't know if you want to use this one or that one. This one.
I have mine as well. All right, so while I set it up, firstly, my name is Girish Mohile. I'm based in Mumbai, and today I'm just going to give a brief background about EB5 visa. So Snehal and David did a great job explaining what L1 visa is all about. And if you do qualify for it, it's a great option because it's one of the fastest routes to be in the US. And if the main priority is to expand your business in the US, then L1 is the way to go. But we, as Indians, we like to have options, right? We always look for better options to go for. So I'm not saying EB5 is a better option or a less better option, but it will depend on what you want to achieve while you are in the US. So let's say I'm a businessman over here in India, and my sole priority is to expand my business. Then L1 is the way to go. Now, I also want to expand my business in the US, but my another priority is to settle my family over there. I want to take my family to the US. I want my children to have their education in the US. Probably I don't even want a green card, but I want my family members or probably my children to have a green card. So is my 21-year-old son or 25 years old daughter, are they going to qualify for L1A if I am the main applicant? Then the answer is no. Because if I am the main business person, if I am the main applicant for the L1, my children below the age of 21 qualify for for L1. But if they cross that barrier, if they cross that age of 21 years, they will not be a derivative to that same application. Is that correct? Yeah. So it will all depend on what we want to achieve. So firstly, let's talk about what EB5 visa is all about. EB5 visa is employment-based fifth category visa. So L1 visa falls under the category of a non-immigrant category visa. Of course, you can change from L1 to EB5, L1 to EB1C. I think Snehal touched upon that as well. But EB5 is a separate option altogether. It's purely an investment-based visa. So we'll talk about what the investments are and what kind of investments they need to be. But let's first understand what EB5 visa is. EB5 visa was actually came into effect back in the 1990s, and the sole purpose was if someone is investing in a business wherein they are able to employ 10 or more people in their business, and if they qualify for that minimum investment category amount, then they will get a green card directly. So you don't need a business in India to be attached to that US business. So let's say I have a business in India, I'm into textiles, but I'm not sure whether I want to link that business to the US business or not. Maybe I want to do it down the line, but now my priority is just to focus on that US business, and I'm sure that I'm going to have those projections that I'm going to employ 10 people or more in the long term. Then EB5 visa is one of the options. Why? Because there's no linkage which is required as per law if you want to qualify for EB5 visa. So all in all, if I want to have a business in the US and I can have 10 people on a full-time basis in the US, then I can qualify for EB5 visa potentially. Now why I say potentially? Because just like L1, there are certain requirements attached to it, right? What is the first requirement? There needs to be some kind of a minimum investment amount. So it will depend where the business lies. So if the business lies in a specific area, it's called as a targeted employment area. These are all technical terms. But if that business falls into that area, then the investment amount is going to vary. The investment amount is 800,000 US dollars. It translates to around 6.5 crores. So yes, the amount is higher. There is a minimum investment requirement if you compare it directly with L1, wherein there is no specific requirement of that you need to have a specific amount in your business, as opposed to EB5, where you need to have 800,000 US dollars into that business, and then you need to create those jobs. Now, when I say that I'm going to have those funds in my own business, it means that the business, any amount is at risk investment, right? You can't say that I know 100% for sure that the investment which I'm going to do is going to be successful. It doesn't work like that, either in India or in the US. Even if you have funds lying in your bank account in an FD, if the bank goes belly up, there is potentially a chance that you might lose your funds. You're insured up to, I think, 5 lakh rupees in India if something goes wrong with the bank. So it needs to be an at-risk investment. And the second requirement is you need to have 10 full-time employees in the US. Now, this is, I'm speaking from a perspective of someone who wants to have their own business. Now, what is the second option available over here? The second option available over here is going through a regional center route. Now, what are regional centers? Regional centers basically are entities who are designated to have all those investments, pooled investments from investors. So again, comparing between a main applicant who is a business person, I want to have my own business. So I go ahead, I form an entity over there, I invest my 800,000 in my own business, and I apply for my EB5 visa. Second, my son is, I'm a business person, but my son or daughter is going to be the main applicant over here. Now that person doesn't have enough experience or qualification to start their own business. They probably can, but I want something else for them. What I want is probably they will be studying in the US, or probably they will be studying in India. By the time they finish their studies in India or in the US, I want their green card application to proceed. How does that happen? Regional center visa, EB5 visa is one of the options. So with regional centers, it's a pooled investment wherein there are going to be 50, 100 other investors like that main applicant, like that student, who are going to invest in that particular entity. Now that regional center entity has 1 or 2 projects with them. It might be construction project, it might be any kind of project, wherein there are certain projections which they do. So the due diligence part as to whether that project will be successful or not, of course, at risk project, it's done by them. So the due diligence part is done by them. Now the due diligence, what we need to do as investors is to ensure that the regional center that we are choosing or the project which the regional center has, whether they are sound enough, what is their track record, what has been the history with that regional center, all those things come into picture. Now, you also need, so there are 2 or 3 stakeholders in this. Firstly, the main applicant. Secondly, the regional center and the project. Thirdly, the immigration attorneys. So what immigration attorneys are going to do is they are going to collate your information and the project or the regional center information, and they're going to make a filing with USCIS, which is the adjudicating authority. Now, how does that work? How do you transfer money in the first place? So in L1, as Snehal mentioned, that that money can be transferred in several ways. You can transfer, you can have your stocks being shown into that US business. In EB5, you do need your personal funds. So if there is a student who is going to apply for an EB5 visa, parents can give those funds. If you yourself are the main applicant, you can have your 800,000 transferred via the LRS route. Now, I'm not going too much into detail as to how LRS works, but it's basically liberalized remittance scheme as per RBI, wherein each resident Indian is able to transfer 250,000 US dollars per annum. So when it comes to 800,000 US dollars, close family members are able to utilize each of their LRS limits to transfer those funds and invest in that particular business. So that's how it works. So what immigration attorneys are going to do is they are going to do the source of funds work. They are going to check each and every penny, each and every dollar as to the trail, as to where the money has come from, where is the money coming from. If I say that, okay, I sold my inherited property, which was inherited by me 2 years back, and the actual purchase of that property happened 50 or 70 years back. So that becomes straightforward. I show that I own that property, I show the sale of that property, I show that the bank's bank statement showing that the funds have come into my bank account, straightforward. If the money is coming through my investments, then I will have to go back and show where the money exactly has come from and what is the trail of those funds. And immigration attorneys are going to be responsible to ask each of those documentations from you, right? Once that is done and the transfer happens, the money actually goes into that project. It might be your own project, it might be a regional center project. That is when the initial application is done. Once the initial application is done, now the waiting time starts. You don't need to do anything. Your immigration attorneys are going to inform you that your application has been approved, and that is when the next step of consular processing comes. Now, when it comes to consular processing, it always happens if the main applicant or the family is in India. If you're already in the US, let's say you have also applied for L1 visa, you have your own ongoing business, you have been in the US for a couple of years on L1 visa, then you can directly adjust your status. Now, the trick over here is, now this is something which has, which is an update to the EB5 visa category in the first place, is that if you're already in the US and you apply for EB5 visa, you can also parallelly apply for adjustment of status. Now, is it going to happen that the adjustment of status is directly going to be approved? No. The EB5 application is going to take its own sweet time to get approved, and your adjustment of status is also going to take its own time to get approved. But what you get is an advanced parole, meaning you are able to travel in and out of US while you are waiting for your adjustment of status application or the EB5 application to be approved. So what have we discussed? What is the minimum amount? The minimum amount is 800,000 US dollars if the investment is in a targeted employment area. The investment can be done in your own business, or it can be done in a pooled investment via the regional centers. Thirdly, if you're already in the US, you can directly apply for an adjustment of status parallel to your EB5 application, that will allow you to travel in and out of US. Now also as per the new law, and I'm talking more about the new law because it was passed just in March this year, and it has brought in some changes, updates to make the program essentially better than what it was, is that the regional center program actually is a pilot program. So it's bound to lapse. But if you apply while the current program is in effect, even if the program lapses, it's not going to affect your application. So your application is safe, and this is something which exactly happened previously, that people applied through the previous law and the program lapsed in between, and they had to wait for 8 to 10 months. They were in limbo. Their applications were not being processed. But that has been changed now. So all these new changes have taken place in EB5 domain, which essentially, if it's more suitable to your requirements, you can go for that option along with the L1 option as well. So if you have any more questions, I'm happy to help you with those as well. And yeah.
Girish, one of the things I think that's most interesting for our audience is that this new program is all about full disclosure, because what I think the U.S. government realized is that the agents were making all the money.
Right.
And they were taking tremendous amounts of money from people, and nobody really knew where that money was going. So now it's being handled like securities, where there's got to be full disclosure so everybody knows what's going on. So that's one of the really
that's
good
one of the
things that
highlights.
happen.
That's actually streamlining the EB5 process, because see, if anything is unregulated, there are bound to be frauds. There are going to be bad actors who come into picture and who are going to spoil the scenario. What the new law states is that if there is an agent involved, and I'm not saying agencies being involved is essentially a bad thing, because not everybody is technically savvy to know what the US securities law says or what the EB5 project is going to look like. So you are going to need some kind of help potentially. If you want to go with your own instincts, you can do that. But if you want to have some kind of help with those agencies, you can have those. But what used to happen is there wasn't any kind of, it was essentially opaque. It wasn't really a transparent system, and that has changed. The situation is currently evolving in terms of how the disclosures or the registrations are going to happen.
Right.
But yes, it is in place, which is going to ensure that the program is more streamlined than what it was.
Okay, so we're going to thank you.
Sure, yeah.
Girish, thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you.
And what we're going to do now is, I think, and now that we've discussed EB5, there are counterparts, of course, on the EB5 side in Canada. And I think what we'll do is move along to Gagan. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Gagan? So, oh, okay.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Snehal, and thank you very much, Girish, for all the insight about the US business, and especially what insight you have provided. In the beginning, as I said you, majority 95% your question and answer covered by the Snehal and David. So now there might be a few questions related to Canada also. So I would like to request Ms. Gagan Mundra, so she can provide all the insights about the Canada business also. I would like to introduce Ms. Gaganjot Mundra. She is a barrister and solicitor in Canadian lawyer at NPZ Law Group. She is dedicated to providing a wide array of business and family immigration law services for skilled Canada-bound workers. Ms. Mundra's experience in Canadian immigration practice includes the family and employment-based immigration along with the cross-border immigration needs. So without taking much of the time, I would like to request Ms. Gaganjot Mundra for all the insight about the Canada business. There might be a few questions related to USA or Canada. We will grant a few minutes related to your question after this presentation. So be ready with your questions if you have any.
Thank you very much. I think I was almost convinced to open a business in US, but let's shed some light on Canadian immigration as well. So yes, we all want to now know why Canada, because US has such lucrative offers for immigration, but on the side, Canada provides parallel immigration processes. Just like we have L1 on the US side, we have intra-company transfer on the Canadian side. Thanks. Thank you. And why Canada? We've already discussed and we've shared the trade relations and the bilateral agreements that these two countries share. And that's very encouraging to have a very healthy and a welcoming relation for new business individuals to set up their business there in Canada. We also see that now approximately 4% are Canadians from Indian origin, which is a very healthy population presence in Canada. Our immigration minister recently introduced and informed about the new immigration plan, where they are looking to welcome new permanent residents each year. Starting from this to 2023 and 2024, we end up inviting 475,000 new permanent residents, which is a really good number. Limiting our discussion and portraying a landscape for business immigration, we have a startup visa, which is similar to EB-5 on the US side. We have self-employed entrepreneurial program, as well as intra-company transfer, which goes to L1A, L1B. Taking our first program of startup visa program, the requirements of the program are pretty much simple. It requires ability to become economically established in Canada, commitment certificate from designated organizations, a language test in IELTS, TOEFL for a mark of 5, very low, and minimum income requirement for personal funds while you move to Canada, and also qualifying business. What are designated organizations? How do we approach a startup visa program through these designated organizations? Now, in a very simple way, these are the ventures. If you have an idea, a business idea or venture, you must get support of one of the designated organizations, and there are 3 of them. We have venture capital funds that require a minimum investment of about $200,000. We have angel investor group that requires a minimum investment of $75,000, and business incubators with no minimum investment. And that's really the one that people and individuals and business-like individuals are looking to invest, just because there is no minimum investment required. But in real world, we need to show some kind of investment that would qualify your business to be set up in Canada. We require the support of these designated organizations, and they provide us with a commitment certificate that are issued with a 6-month validity period. Now, the commitment certificate must identify the investment team, describe the business, describe the business applicant's role, and the confirmation of control of assets. It also includes letter of support and identify essential persons for the business. What that really means is the designated organization tries to portray similar to a business plan, but provides the government with a broad array of what this business will be doing at the time it's formed in Canada. We next come to what is a qualifying business. What kind of business are we talking about when we are looking to set up there in Canada? Applicant provides an active and ongoing management of the business from within Canada, and business must be incorporated in Canada, and the essential operations also has to be within Canada, which is the whole logical sense to set up a business in Canada so we can operate it functionally, and also that would eventually be your path for permanent residency. Voting rights are also attached to such kind of business shares of the company that will operate the business. It must be held by each applicant with minimum holding of 10% and jointly held by applicants and designated entities with more than 50% of interest. We require the applicants for startup visa program. There can be more than one applicant, so up to a limit of 5 applicants can make a startup visa program applications together, and they must be either designated as essential or non-essential. That has to be put very clearly, who is essential part of that business entity that is being formed for startup visa. There's no business background is not required for the individual to set up this kind of an entity, but always, of course, in real world, we want anyone to have some kind of a business experience to set up an entity. Dependents and spouses and children as well, up to the age of 22 years are included. During the time your permanent residency application is pending, and the child ages out of 22, that age limit is locked at the time the application is made. So if the child turns 25, by the time your permanent residence application is expedited or is been adjudicated by the officer, the child will still get the permanent residency. As mentioned before, your personal funds should be there to support yourself, and these funds should be separate from what you have used for the investment purposes. Permanent residency through startup visa program takes presently about 32 months. So what that means is that while you are waiting for the application to get approved or adjudicated, either direction, you can also be applying for work permit while the processing of the permanent residency is being pending. Spouses are eligible for open work permit. So when you're applying for a work permit, your spouse can automatically apply for open work permit, which means that he or she is not obliged to work with any one employer, but can work with any employer. While making a work permit application, we require medical clearance, police clearance certificate, and up to 52 weeks of accounts, or up to 52 weeks of income source that the government wants to know that you are not going to be a charge on the government, but you have enough resources to take care of yourself as well as your family. The processing time, of course, will vary. We are seeing a lot of backlogs in all the applications, but we are also seeing that the government is expediting at every level possible to clear up the backlogs. Why startup visa? Why would I go for startup visa? For one of the reasons, it's lower language requirements. One of the designated organizations does not require minimum investment, and there is no minimum net worth of business person requirement. So and up to 5 applicants can make a business application at the same time. But the downside, of course, the applicant's background, as we mentioned, that they may not have even a business background, but it's always good that the applicant can establish that, look, I did have some kind of a business experience, and I'm going to use that experience towards setting up the company here in Canada. So that always helps. The scary part is that the designated organization can be suspended or de-designated. What that really means that if those designated organizations are have not maintained that status, and your permanent residence application is pending, the government may take 2 ways. Either they would reject it, of course, and you have to start the process all over again, or if the application was approved, the processing officer will still consider what was the status of the designated organization.
So Gagan, basically what this is almost like a non-immigrant investor visa that we have in the United States. It's not open to the Indian nation, right? Because there's no treaty.
Yes.
And for our Gujarati clients who like to work for their own companies, they can put the money in, and then they have an open work permit in Canada to be able to do whatever it is that they want to do. So it's really like the best of both worlds, right?
That's actually the beauty of this program. We've seen an investment of as low as Canadian $150,000 made up towards this kind of an program, and they get approved Of course, there are both ways, nothing is guaranteed, but this is the kind of investment that can lead through the processing of the application successfully. And it does not go by the country of birth, it does not go by minimum investment. We just have to carefully articulate that our application is prepared in a way that we balance out the funds that we are ready to invest, and at the same time, the beauty is that you can be in India, invest that kind of funds, and be a permanent resident when you enter Canada. You also have the option to work, to apply for a work permit in the interim, that you don't want to wait for 32 months. That's the present processing time. So if you don't want to wait for these many months, you also have the option to apply for work permit. We quickly move to another part of work permit, and it's an entrepreneurial or self-employed person program. I just wanted to introduce this program here. It's not very popular, but the good part about this program is that you can apply for a work permit on the basis of buying a business in Canada. In real world, you want to invest and buy a pizza store in the province of Alberta, or you want to buy a pizza store in the province of Ontario. You can do that depending on the cost involved. Of course, we see Ontario is much more expensive and costlier to buy business versus in Alberta. But this would benefit you to have your own work permit, and that's up to for 2 years, and then you can keep extending for another 2 years till you qualify for permanent residency based on your Canadian experience. There comes a part which is intra-company transfer, and we closely share and have an overlap with US immigration as well on this. We call it L1 in US, and we have ICT in Canada.
Gagan, tell us briefly about healthcare in Canada, and when do individuals qualify for that?
So either ways, when they're applying for a work permit, and even as students and who are there on a study permit, that allows them to have and take the benefit of Health Canada and advantage of the health benefits given to any citizens or permanent residents of Canada.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now we deal with the objectives and goals of intra-company transfer. What are the corporate goals? We clearly want to set up a Canadian entity to expand business. Now, as most of you have import and export business, it is such a good opportunity and an evidence that you already have your footprints in Canada and US, and that shows a good and a strong support of evidence that you have a vendor and client presence in Canada, and now you're looking to have an official presence in Canada by setting up one of the entities. The government would look into that you have a real situation because of the time zone difference, because of any other practical problems. You cannot operate the business just from India. And this is, of course, an alternate path for provincial and federal investment groups programs. The employee that goes on intra-company has the benefit of either being a temporary worker there and return, or be eligible for permanent residency and apply for PR after minimum 1 year of work experience in Canada. Similar requirements as employer: what is the size, what is the structure of the company, what is the relationship of foreign and Canadian companies, financial strength. And it's very important to note, this is one fine difference between US and Canada, whether non-compliance with the immigration rules and regulations, labor laws, that will make your company will not allow your company to offer any work permits in future. The government has the ability to flag your company, and you will not be allowed to operate if you're not following certain IRCC and labor laws. If the company also has prior work permit refusals, that also doesn't really work in your favor. So that means there was something not eligible for, or there were some flaws that your company had for which your work permit for one of the employees was refused. Now, as I briefly mentioned before about the startup scenario of new employer, you're a new employer, you wish to set up a company there, have a presence there in Canada, you should be able to structure ownership of foreign company, investment sources, managerial business experience, and qualifying relationship between the two entities, and understand the industry needs when you are setting up the company there. Briefly touching about federal and provincial business entities, Canada has an ability, you have an ability to either set up your company on a federal level or on the provincial level. Both these entities are compared based on your resident, non-resident status. The taxes get affected whether you're a resident of that province or country, and non-resident, your taxes again get, of course, they get bumped up a bit. So while you're forming these companies, you of course have to reach out to a professional CPA who can guide you on how these companies should be registered, whether you want to do a federal registration or you want to do a provincial registration. Each province has very detailed registration plans that should be followed. With the federal, we follow Canadian Revenue Agency for purposes of conducting GST, HST, payroll, etc. So your company has to be registered with them. So it just comes down to, and if you want to register for permits and license, again you have to reach out for the provincial government. If you are, for example, selling of vape is a very popular business in Canada. That's what we've seen, that that business is coming up recently. Now, provincial businesses are registered under Business Corporations Act, and they provide the options of limited corporations, limited liability corporations, and unlimited liability. So these are again some of the entities that you wish to see and compare before you set up your presence there in Canada. We work for towards a qualifying relationship between the employer and foreign worker. What kind of relationship are we ready to set up and prove to the government that my employee who has worked here in India is now ready to be transferred to Canada, and especially under the circumstances that it is going to be a new company or entity. You of course want to send your individuals who are managers, executives, and senior managerial positions, so that they have the ability to have a mirror effect of your company presence in India, in Canada as well. So you're not going to, for that to have a real effect, you should always have a physical office there in Canada, where someone is already there to pick up phones, so your manager is not going to be the one picking up phones and opening the door. So these are few things that we need to closely watch when we are doing intra-company transfers for managers. The qualifying relationship includes whether it's a parent company, subsidiary, branch, or affiliation. Both the Canadian and foreign companies must or will be doing business. Doing business, what does that really mean? Doing business regularly, continuously, and systematically providing goods, services between the foreign and Canadian entities. Doing business really becomes important when we are saying that we want to transfer an individual from India to Canada who has specialized knowledge. And specialized knowledge includes unique equipment that your company has, maybe organic friendly products, or maybe those are very unique that your company has a patent on. So those are the products and services for which we have to go extra mile to establish that the specialized knowledge required is that the individual has will be transferred to Canada and will benefit the economy of Canada as well. It's very important to note that just having an agent or an office in Canada will not qualify for an intra-company transfer. There has to be more than that. There has to be a footprint already there in Canada that we can establish. Even if you don't have, you can always show that there is prospective need for my company to have a business for which we come to a business plan. Business plan reads out the heart and mind of the company. Be very specific, cannot be very generic at all. You have to show the uniqueness of your business. You have to mention the challenges your business has and how will it overcome. We are living in such an advanced electronic gadget world that you can always find out, or an immigration officer will always find out what is the major challenge that your company will have and what are you offering and explaining it in your business plan. Explain in your business plan what is the significant benefit. Financial, employment, marketing, transfer of knowledge, cultural benefits. Canada would like to know that you are bringing in business. How are you going to impact any of these factors? It's important also to provide an exit plan, because when we make an application for a manager or an executive, we do say that it is not a permanent intent work permit. We are also saying that this manager will be going for 2 years, helping to set up the company, and will be returning back. It's important that in a business plan, we mention that there is an exit plan where the employee will be sharing the information, uniqueness of that position to another employee and preparing them to take care of the business if they intend to go back. Again, it's very important that when you are making a business plan, you must deal and address the requirements of each program and respond to that in plan. So if you are sending in a manager, executive, or a specialized knowledge, your business plan should have how these individuals will uniquely contribute in the growth of the company. Clearly explain why Canada. Let them know that why you are going to base your operations in Canada and not in other countries. Maybe this is also a gateway for you to expose your company to North America and have a footprint even there. Interestingly, why not intra-company transfer? What are the downsides of intra-company transfer? Now, it requires existing foreign company to have a relationship with Canadian company. What if your company here in India is not yet established or registered, and the foreign company must continue to operate, which really means, and something like US also has, that it cannot wind up. You cannot say that, okay, we've set up the company there, and now let's wrap up the Indian entity. No, sorry, it doesn't work that way. You have to continue operating your business here in India so that that relationship and the foundation of that intra-company transfer remains solid. Then the transferee must have an employee relationship with foreign and Canadian company. What that really means is that employee has been working here in India for 1 continuous year. And only then they can be transferred to Canada. But 1 full year, we don't want to keep it just to 12-month mark, but we may want to extend it more than that. So that's something you'll have to give a logical thinking, that how much influence and how much knowledge that individual has gained to make and help the growth and operations of the company in Canada. Then this is also seen not the best model for tax saving purposes. And again, intra-company transfer is not a PR program. It does not guarantee that the individual will have any kind of a permanent residency at the end of 2-year, 3-year terms that they are in Canada. But why intra-company transfer is still popular? Because of course it's a relatively quick application. It is covered under something called a global skills strategy, and the expedite process for such kind of applications is about 2 weeks. It may go up to 3 or 4 weeks depending on the processing timelines, but still much faster than the regular work permit, which takes up to 6 months. There is no minimum investment amount. As we mentioned about setting up companies in Canada, it does not require minimum investment. It is the need of the company and how much you can logically prove to the government that this is the investment that is sufficient to run the payroll of the executive manager, as well as the expense of the office, the rental space that we have, and the other administrative expenses, having a front desk manager, having phones, etc. Those all add to certain expenses which should be addressed in business plan. It is available to any nationality, so it is not just restricted to individuals of European origin, but it can go up to, for India as well, it's open. And it's open for a variety of positions, so not just restricted to managerial, but has executive and most importantly specialized knowledge, because individuals with specialized knowledge may not be even have educational background, but they still would qualify just because they have been with the company in India or the parent company for the longest time to know their unique equipment information, specialized knowledge information, etc. And there is no median wage. Yes.
So Gagan, it seems that there are so many parallels between the various types of non-immigrant and immigrant visas, both in Canada and the United States. Why Canada? What does going to Canada bring to, and we obviously go back and forth all the time. We're kind of a unique immigration law firm in the United States because we're taking people from India to Canada. We're also taking India to the United States, and you and I are always talking about the worldwide brain drain and where are those people going. But what's the advantage to the folks who are in this room as to why they want to go to Canada?
Because we win over by giving them permanent residency through express entry, and we give them an opportunity to apply.
So they can get green cards in Canada faster?
That's right.
And then how long does it take them to get citizenship?
And if they are staying and continue to stay in Canada for 1,095 days in 3 years' time after they receive permanent residency, they are eligible to apply for citizenship and have a Canadian citizen passport.
And once they have a Canadian passport, Snehal, then tell us, what is the advantage to someone from India if they have a Canadian passport?
So if you have a Canadian passport, then additional visa opportunities open up to come to the U.S. A TN is one, which is similar to an H-1B for professionals that are listed under the NAFTA occupational list. It also allows an individual with a Canadian passport to apply for an E2 visa, which is the treaty trader, treaty investor, which is also very advantageous because unlike EB-5, you can invest as much as you want to start up your business in the U.S. You don't need a foreign business. And the U.S. is unfortunately does not allow Indian nationals to come on the E2. So you have additional options with the Canadian passport to get to the U.S., which then could open up green card opportunities as well.
So would you ladies say that perhaps looking at Canada as a stepping stone opportunity for those people who can't immigrate directly to the United States, either through family or for business, it opens up a new door for them and something that they can take advantage of in the future?
Absolutely, absolutely. It cuts down the wait period that we see in US and which could go for, no comments, about 10 years or more. It cuts down on that wait period and give the opportunity with startup visa to become a landed permanent resident even before they enter Canada, and a great opportunity for a family having young kids to enter Canada as a permanent resident and open work on study anywhere throughout the provinces.
Thank you. Perfect.
All right, so I would just wrap up this business plan by saying at the end, we do get permanent residency of Canada. We have we have the ability to actually apply and be eligible for one of the permanent residency programs through any of these work permit programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Gagan, for all the insights. There might be so many questions in your mind, so one by one we'll take questions. You can ask a question in Hindi, English or Gujarati. ત્રણમાંથી કોઈ પણ લેંગ્વેજ હિન્દી, ઇંગ્લિશ કે ગુજરાતીમાંથી તમારો ક્વેશ્ચન તમે પૂછી શકો છો. આ ત્રણ લેંગ્વેજમાંથી આન્સર તમને મળશે. વન બાય વન વી કેન યસ.
So the question is there, okay, so the question is there a language, English language requirement, you mean? Okay. No, in the US, there is no requirement that you be able to speak English, or there's no test or score. However, many times when you're going to the consulate for the visa stamping, they're going to probe you more if you're not fluent in English. Okay, you don't have to be, but it's nice if you are. And if you're not proficient in English, the language that you do speak, you want to make sure you are confident and able to answer the questions appropriately as a manager or executive.
Yes.
So just because a US citizen wants to enter a partnership with a foreign national, it doesn't allow the foreign national any visa. Okay? There's no visa that says if you own 50% of a business with a US citizen, you have a visa. There's no visa like that. Okay? So if you have the possibility of doing an L1, okay, because you have the Indian company, you've been working for the Indian company, then you can go into a partnership with a US citizen, maybe not 50-50, okay, because we have to see who owns the Indian company. So only in that sense are you able to get a visa like the L1A.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you repeat that question, please?
There is a joint venture company, right, between India and US-based company, right? And later on, because minimum requirement is 51% holding of Indian company to satisfy the criteria. But later date, suppose the joint venture does not go long, and suppose the US company dilutes their, investment to Indian company, will it be okay?
Later on, the US company dilutes, I'm not following you, I'm sorry.
I think the question is one of valuation, is
Yes.
what you're asking. And it really would, there are so many different methodologies that are used for valuation. And a good valuation company is going to give you all the valuations. It kind of, I'm sorry to do this, but it kind of reminds me of a good joke. And that is, a person is interviewing for the accounting position, and the first person comes in, they say, what's 1 plus 1? And the person says 2, they say, okay, and the person goes out. Next person, what's 1 plus 1? They say 2, and the person goes out. Next person comes in, they say, what's 1 plus 1? Person says what do you want it to be? And they say, you're hired. Okay? So it's really subjective. It has to do with, you know, the quality of the valuation service that you're getting. So if you're trying to achieve what I think you're looking to do, I think you want to look at a very highly qualified valuation service and let them know what your goal is, and they should be able to help you to do that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay?
Next question, please. Can you please pass it the mic?
So if my company is already exporting to US and we are planning to set up a warehouse there without setting up any subsidiary
Can you please
or a
speak in the
branch.
mic? We just can't hear you here.
So if my company is already exporting to US and we are just planning to set up a warehouse there without setting up a subsidiary company or a branch, is that possible and how?
So that's a really great question. Actually, it borders on corporate law. What you want to look at is in that state. In every state in the United States has what's called a doing business statute. And that doing business statute is going to tell you what you need to do. So for example, sometimes warehouses are actually listed in the doing business statute as something that would require you to have a presence there. And if you do have a presence, you have to register in that state. So, I think there are two parts of your question. One is, what do you have to do if you have a warehouse? And two is, do you have to have a company? And so you're going to want to look at what's called the doing business statute in the state where you're doing, and that will guide the answer to your question. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to give you a specific answer because there are 50 doing business statutes. So for every single state, there's a different one. Okay?
Yes.
Wait for the mic, it's
Mic,
coming.
mic.
You briefed that different states have different tax structures. So I need some clarification. Which state would be better for us to set up an entity over there? And second question regarding, you said about sub-chapter S, the S Corp. It's much difficult to set up a business entity with the S. Why exactly is that so? And the third one, if we are transferring our stock to the US, how can we do that? Do we need to show the fund transfer in that, or just we have to show the stock transfer?
Okay, I think your first question was, can you just give me that first question again?
Tax, yeah.
Tax, okay. So in the US, you have federal tax, and you have some states have, actually most states have a state tax. Some states do not. We are not tax professionals, so we can't advise you on which state to form your company for the tax benefits. So you have to speak with your accountant who can help you make that decision. Okay, but you're still going to be subject to the federal tax. The second question about the S Corp, the S Corp is only available for US citizens and green card holders, and it is for those companies that have less than 100 shareholders. So if you are a foreign national, you don't qualify as the S Corp. So for everybody sitting here, you're not going to be an S Corp, okay? Right, so if you form, as David was saying, if you form the LLC, you have the option of designating that entity as a corporation, sole proprietor. So again, these are complex tax questions, which we can't help you with that, unfortunately. And your third question was, please, what was that again?
It was regarding the stock transfer.
Okay, right. So the way that we do the stock transfer is that we actually have a list, an itemized list of the stock, the value of that, okay, and it's just added as a chart. That product or stock is shipped to the US, and that value is something that you decide. What is the value of the stock? Okay, if the stock you're transferring is valued at 150,000 US dollars, that's how much the company is investing. That's what's listed on the stock ledger. And then eventually that US company is going to sell that stock and, realize that money.
Sir, can we have soft copy of the slide so presented by you? Because sometimes within 2 hours it is difficult to keep in all these things in mind.
So the question is, can he have a soft copy of the
Or
presentation?
any other link so that we can study or we can download.
I suppose that what we'll do is we'll speak to the executive board and figure out a best way to convey the information to the membership. Is that a good way to do it? Yeah?
What we can do is we'll work with them if it is possible for them to share the presentation. Otherwise, we'll try and make a summary out of it and at least send in the findings or whatever the key learnings and takeaways are there.
Can we share it with the members?
You were talking about this in the business plan, market analysis needs to be put up. So for someone who is not in the US, how easy or how difficult is it to put a market analysis, because we don't really get that kind of information?
Okay, so the business plan does require that market analysis. You don't do that. We don't do that. When you hire the business plan company, that is a service that they provide. They do the market analysis. They have a very detailed questionnaire about your business, what you're doing, how many employees, your clients, your customers. They go out and do that for you. Any other questions?
Let's say can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let's say your visa is like B1, B2, and you want to open up an entity in USA in any state, and then can you go for there and work for a time being like 3 months, 6 months?
Okay, the key word here is work. You cannot work in the US on the B1, B2. Okay? When you come to the US on the B1, B2, you can conduct business on behalf of your foreign company. You are not coming to work. So be very careful when you are entering the US and the CBP at the airport asks you why you're coming. Don't say, I'm coming to work for the company, okay? Because work means that's unauthorized employment, okay? You are going to have big problems if you say that. But you can conduct business when you come to the US on the B1. So you can, go see an office, speak to the lawyer about setting up the business, talk to your accountant. You can do all of that. You can conduct business, but you're not working.
The word, just for clarification, the word work means you're getting W-2 income. That's work. And what Snehala is saying is you don't use the word work. So when people show up at the port of entry, if they say, what are you coming to do? You say, I am coming to the US to perform services on behalf of the foreign company. That's not work. Because the remuneration and the benefit of what you're doing doesn't accrue to a US source. It accrues to a foreign source. And that's the distinction. And it's it's a subtlety. It's very subtle, but if you understand that, then you're able to navigate through the port of entry, because that's really what the officer is looking for. Are you coming to work? That's what they're looking for.
We have a question in the way back.
So I had 2 questions. First one is that if there is a registered firm, is that okay, or should there be a registered company from India if I want to expand to US? And the second one is that one of the requirement was social security number. So what are the ways to get it?
So I think your question is, if you are not a registered firm here, can you still open up a company in the US?
No. So there is a registered firm or a registered company here. So two types. Same as there's a corporation and what was the LLC in US.
Right.
So for India, is it required to be a firm or a company?
No, there's no requirement that you have to have a firm or a company. Sole proprietors can also form the business in the US. Okay, so in that case, the sole proprietor can be 100% in the US, but it must be at least 51% to show that there's a qualifying relationship. And your second question was the Social Security number, right?
Yes.
How do you get that? So the Social Security number is assigned by the Social Security Administration, and only those individuals who are authorized to work are entitled to that. So when you apply for that, it asks you for your status in the US, your visa classification, and if you are permitted to work, then they assign you with a Social Security number.
Great.
Let's keep it at that. Behind you, Pachadi.
So I have a question for Canada. So is there a way that I can register a company in Canada and operate the company in Canada from India?
Yes, you can do that as long as you have a company here in India and that is doing a business, it is operational, and you do have ways to set up a company in Canada as well and do all the transfer of funds and transactions.
So do I need to have someone with a status in Canada?
No,
meaning-
no.
Okay.
So few of the provinces, Ontario, Nova Scotia, Alberta, British Columbia, these are few provinces that recently removed the requirements to have a Canadian citizen or permanent resident when registering a corporation in Canada. So yes, you can also set up the company from here without having a Canadian citizen on board.
And can I operate it from India as well, or?
No. Now it depends what are your objective. Is your objective to just open a company there and have an office? So that would not qualify for any kind of work permits if you want to have an employee transfer to Canada. So that would not help you much. It will help you, of course, to set up and see and have the market analysis done, how good your business would run if you happen to set up in a full-blown way. Thank you.
Ma'am, I have a question related to Canada. I'm working in a marketing firm, so if we don't have any export business so far doing. If I want to develop the clients over there and I want to establish business over there, so is there any possibility that I don't need a team back in my hand, like in Canada? I don't need office. I just need I can work from home. The company firm is here directly export the product to the clients only. So is it any possibility that I don't need any employees there and I don't need any office? I can work from home also, like coordinate with them or over the phone. So is it possible?
Again, it always comes down, what is your objective? Is your objective to work there? Is your objective to set up a business in Canada? What is your objective? Are you looking to transfer or work in Canada? Then you will need an employer support. Or are you looking to set up your own office? Then you need to go through an entrepreneurial self-employed work permits.
Okay, right. So if I want to establish that, so I need some of the things over there, right?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Yes. So currently for the B1 and B2 category in USA, there has been let's say lot of wait time, maybe around 2.5 and around 3 years. L1 petition, L1 is a sort of petition. So I'd like to understand how much time does it take, starting from, let's say, once the application has been done to the clearance, any general idea?
Before we can file the L1, all of the things that we talked about need to be completed. Forming the company, money transfer, finding a lease, all of that has to be done. Then we file the case. So between starting that process and filing will typically take between 2 to 4 months or more, okay, because it all depends on what stage you're at. Once we file the case, we have the option to premium process with an additional $2,500 fee to the government. They will make a decision in 15 days, okay? Most of the time, it is a request for evidence. But once if they issue the RFE, the request for evidence, it just means that it will take a little bit longer before your case will be approved. Once the case is approved, if you are in India, you have to go for your visa stamping. And so, of course, we are dealing now with the same problem with trying to schedule an interview. The nice thing about the L is that when we file your case, we can request a start date 6 months in advance. So if I file your case today, November 10th, then I can request a date into the future and say, I want to file today, but I don't need this person until April 2023. So hopefully that will give us some lead time.
Understood. And does it require any, when we are going to set up the business in USA, so does it require the assessed number of local people? So I have heard something about that, so you need some local representative to establish a business.
So forming the company, registering the company, does not require a social. But getting a tax ID number does require somebody's social security number. And that could be your attorney, that could be your accountant, that could be somebody in the US who is your relative. That person has to be authorized by the company to do that transaction. And then once the company has a tax ID number, that's a separate legal entity.
Thank you.
We'll take only last one question, 1 or 2 questions. Okay, fine.
But I have a business over here in India. I want to export my goods to USA. Probably Amazon and some online are the options. As I don't know the way, suppose I want to establish a warehouse over there. For that, if I require a visa to travel, then can I directly apply for this L1 visa? And suppose I want to open a new firm over there in USA. So is there any time between this? How can I do this? I don't have the clear roadmap.
Okay, the L1 visa, you're applying for the L1 only after you have formed your company in the US. Okay, you form the company, you transfer the money, you have a plan. Then you can apply for the L1. Don't forget that you only qualify for the L1 if you have an Indian operation. Okay, so once all of that is planned out, you can apply for the L1. If you have a B1, B2 visa, you can go to the US to look for that warehouse, okay, but you're not working, you're doing, you're looking for opportunities. So it doesn't allow you to work.
So in that case, I have to apply for B1 visa for
Yes.
to go over there.
The B1 is a business visa, you're applying for that to go to the US for business, not to work, not to start up you can start up your operations, but you're not working for that company.
Okay.
Last question.
Can I? Thank you. So actually I established a C Corp in New Jersey recently, and actually I'm also working with a joint venture between one company in USA. So in that, actually my next meeting is for joint venture. So we just almost closing the joint venture, but can I eligible for L1A if I need to work for my company, which we done the agreement between two companies, or I have to go through my own company?
That's not a yes or no answer. I don't have enough information. Do you have a company in India? Have you been working for that company over there for at least a year? Okay, so we went through those requirements. If you can meet those requirements, then you can apply for the L1.
Okay, got it.
Only last question.
I'm at stage 0. If I want to start an establishment in USA or Canada, whom should I approach first? A lawyer, a CA, or an agency who will do marketing for me first, so that I can decide which area or which state I need to go for? or is there any common platform or company where I can go and all things will be served for me there? I mean, how should I approach for this kind of thing?
That's a really great question.
Oh, so you're going to give it to me? Okay. So unfortunately, we have not found an organization that can provide you with all of this, market research and information. What I can tell you is that if you are right now at a state that your foreign company can expand, all right, then you certainly could explore the L and similar options for Canada, but you have to do your own due diligence in terms of, does it make sense to expand? Do you have clients? So there's, as far as I know, there is no entity out there that can provide you with that
no
information.
Entity, but I
Right.
want to start. Whom should I go? A lawyer first to know this rule regulation, or a CA regarding what kind of?
Yeah. I would say start with the lawyer first.
Okay.
Because you want to make sure that in your mind you're thinking the L1, do you even qualify for that?
Okay.
If you're working with a reputable immigration attorney, here.
That's what I want to know. What is the
Right,
first step for
right.
me?
Then we can do the assessment and we'll tell you, this is possible, but you need to speak to your CA to make the best decision from the tax liability standpoint. So we would work closely with your CA to do that.
And since this is a long process from like few weeks to few months and all, so this once I approach you, so this services is included till it is successful, or it is like a step-by-step procedure?
This is not a weekly process
Yes.
or a monthly, this is a commit, we're committed for years.
Yes, that's
Okay, because we're talking about the L, the green card. So it's, it goes on for a long time. We work with you every step of the way, okay? It's not just get you the L and we forget about you. I follow with my clients every 3 months, 6 months to make sure they're doing what they're doing to get that extension. Okay, what do we now need to do to get the green card? So it's a collaborative process, and hopefully it's, the relationship is going to be long-term until you get that green card.
I just want to follow up on Snehal's answer to say, because I asked the same question many, many years ago. And I think the answer is always have a good team. And your team is an excellent lawyer who does corporate, and hopefully, if you're interested in immigration, have a good accountant and also have a good insurance person and someone who knows about insurance. If you have a good team, you're always going to be okay.
So at present I can approach you first, then we can have a ways which way to go first.
Yeah, we can even help you put the team together.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much all the panelists for a wonderful interaction with all our participants. So I would like to request Mr. Jainil Shah for his closing remarks.
Very honestly, I feel as the last person who's likely to be looking forward by all of you to be here. But thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I don't want to take any more of your time. At AMA, we are pretty punctual as to when we start and when we end. But thanks to the interest in the discussion that we stretched for nearly 30 more minutes, I hope this was useful. It was certainly seemed to have opened a lot of eyes on the fact that if you want to establish a branch or a business in USA, you don't need a certain amount of investment, you don't need a certain amount of turnover in India, and so on and so forth. So this was certainly very eye-opener. Thank you so much, David, Snehal, and Gaganjot for being here. Well, couple of things. David said that it's part of the culture. If you want to work with India, you have to come and connect and have all of that. But I also say it's also part of our culture to drink chai together, right? So, and Snehal, yes, you said that last time when you came, the room was half full. You see a full house today, and at a time when India was playing England in a Cricket World Cup for a semi-final spot, I think this is nothing less than commendable. So thank you all of you for being here with us for so long today afternoon. I think it's been a great evening, and we look forward to having you all again at Ahmedabad Management Association as frequently. One more thing, at AMA, a feedback is not just a piece of paper for all of us. We do go through them very, very religiously. There's a box outside waiting for your feedback form. I hope there's a form on your desk as well. Please fill it. It will take less than 40 seconds. But once you do, please drop them. It will only encourage us to do more such programs that can have better attendance from all of you. So thank you so much. I hope that conveys. So over to you. Yeah, please.
Just one more minute for you. I would like to request Jainil to present a book to Mr. David.
Sir, yeah, one for you. You've imparted enough knowledge. One for you as well.
Our Prime Minister always says that don't give a bouquet, give book only. So that's why book for you, book for Snehal. Book for Gagandeep. Once again, thank you very much to all of for presenting over here, and we are sorry for additional 35 minutes you have invested for yourself only. And last but not least, I would like to request all of you to please join us for a high tea, which is a outside of the canteen. Please have a cup of coffee and cookies together. Thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists for your valuable time and support and all the insight provided to our participants. Thank you.
I forgot to mention, I do also speak Gujarati, so